So now I'd like to invite Jan Woudstra to address the conference.
Thank you for being here. And I was asked by Robert to fill a gap which occurred, and I wasn't the first choice. Um, and I have no illusions, but and I hadn't really sort of done any specific research into health specifically, but I always thought that in creating good landscapes, you were taking care of people's health. And one of the interesting things that has occurred is that is sort of my conclusion. Yeah, landscape is for people's health. And I'm just going to do that and just see how it works. Actually, is it just the click mouse?
Use down arrow.
Down arrow?
Down arrow, up, down arrow. And I start with a very boring slide. It's the last boring slide, but it's a very important one because this is a topic that has been very well covered. And I don't know whether Karen Jones is in there. She's the last word. No, she's not here, so I can be honest. I just picked out a number of pages that come up when you start looking for health and the history of public health. And they're all good papers. They all sort of emphasize particular aspects. But the one thing when I started to look at it is how have designers addressed the issue of public health? What are the sources? So when we look at these, particularly the last one, which is a summation of all the research that has been done, it does provide a very broad scala of aspects to look at with respect to health. And that is also clear when you start looking and drawing out information from the various sources. There's an incredible amount that shows that actually, plants, even before the era of the Blacks movement, was their contribution to health was well understood. Health, happiness, and good humor. Yeah, and here, this is sort of picks up some of the movements that were going on. Is Rauch? It was a famous sort of thesis, and their public parks and their effects on the moral, physical, and sanitary condition of inhabitants of large cities. Very important document that was much read, coming from a medical sort of clinician. So it's a popular research topic, little explored from a garden history historical perspective. There is a socio-political emphasis, and that is quite justified, and there's little about how the notion of health affected design. So what is the significance of earlier trends for the design of health? What does the evidence of earlier trends of design health look like? And how should this evidence be considered in conservation, future design, and management? So we know that this has come about, and we've known about it for more than 2 millennia. When we look at historic statues like this one, the Reflet, and contemporary literature, Virgil's Aeneid, fortunate groves, freer air, radiant light clothe the plain, and these have their own sun and their own stars. Some exercise their bodies in grassy nations, compete in sports and wrestle on yellow sand. It's clear, outdoor, healthy. And that is something that repeats itself through the periods. And here there's Aeneas at the entrance of the Elysian Fields, and here the statue of Hygeia, the goddess of health, which is now sort of transferred into the notion of cleanliness and sanitation. But we see this coming back throughout history, such as, in some of these future cities that were proposed in the United States, such as Hygeia, which picks up the name and try to achieve sort of healthy conditions for its inhabitants. And that is also visible in Pliny's descriptions of the Tuscan countryside. Undisturbed retirement, calm and composed, clear air, unclouded air, so to the health of body and mind. So, the physical and moral health, mental health, was clear. This is sort of the ideal interpretation of it by Robert Castell in the early 18th century, paid for by Lord Burlington, which shows sort of the idealistic sort of the ideal of countryside in the Tuscan countryside. The other notion that comes up and conducive to health is that notion of res in urbe, and that was a notion that was raised by Marshall, but that keeps coming back as a theme by landscape architects who have picked this up and sort of used it as a prompt or a rationale for creating environments within the city. This building was on the edge of Green Park on the northern side. So mental and physical health were always considered and known about, and the one common thing that we see throughout history, and this goes back to the Middle Ages, is the creation of public walks. And these public walks were everywhere in this country and other places. And it was the one sort of type of recreation that was seen as an encouragement for good health, mental and physical. It's still there. And there are lots of similar walks that were created. Here's the one at Richmond in Surrey. And it's still being used very much for the same purpose as it has been for the last 400 years. So that is one side. So towns, any respectable town would have its town walk. The other aspect is the creation of special walks, and spa towns in particular were sort of they created their own walks, because after taking the waters, you had to walk for half an hour, and that half hour, so the walks had to be created, and this is the Serpentine Walk at Buxton. And that was later expanded into a park, but and that was this park designed by Milner and Edward Milner in 1873. And the layout of it is you see that it's all these serpents or these wavy lines which are there so that the walk could be varied. Yeah, so the bandstand, the music, and you walked for half an hour. Good pace around your garden. That was the intention of this design. So a garden designed for walking, particularly, and lots of variation possible. And it's nothing new. We talk about it the same way. Yeah. For health benefits, you need to walk at a hearty pace for at least 30 minutes, 5 days a week. You can accumulate 30 minutes or more over 2 or 3 shorter sessions. This is, I'm going to go back to last week in Ireland, Wooden Bridge. It's the same thing that has been guiding landscape design for the last millennia. And here a view of Kilkenny. Again, a park created for walking and running. The park run has now become a major sort of aspect in parks, and the health benefits of this are emphasized in all the literature and um, and on the various sites, and it's being done everywhere. It's something that's started about 20 years ago, and it's now around the world where people come up every Saturday and they run together, which seems to sort of, a lot of people enjoy that. I hope. For me, it's walking, and another sort of aspect is climbing. We know about the benefits of climbing, and it was Petrarch who reminded us in the Middle Ages and was the first one to climb a mountain for recreation, as he expressed it. So I've got Arthur's seat here just to have a picture. This is not a mountain he actually climbed. It's a mechanism, but it will do. So there were always commons, and in this case also royal parks, in and around various cities, and that is something that is European-wide. Here I've got Hyde Park, but basically was a park for horses. And that's where you went to exercise your horse. You'd go went for a run, and people would walk there as well. But this was one of the prototypes of the public park as to be. The King's Private Road was one created by William III in 1688, and added to this. We've got a couple of slides of this, and it is still being used for the same purpose, not as intensively as it used to be originally. It is slightly diminished today, but this is what people they went there with the entourage, and they went there to see each other and to sit in open air, to take the air. That was good enough. So this was basically a park for the middle and upper classes. Then we come to the year 20th century. One of the key people of that was James Sales Buckingham. He had come from a very poor background, and his notion was to improve the lot of the working man and those who were being suppressed. And he initiated this select committee on public works, which was chaired by Edwin Chadwick, who did the main sort of publications and pushed forward the health issue with respect to public parks. So Buckingham also sort of provided a vision of such health-making cities, and he was the first MP of Sheffield, and he initiated what later was classified as a park system by Patrick Abercrombie. It was not a term that was known by James Sales Buckingham, but it was the movement he sparked off. Basically, it's reserving the valleys of the city as linear walks into the countryside, and that was subscribed to by the following generations. So this is an early example. It's not the only example, and with that we get this notion of, well, we need to provide healthy towns. How are we going to do that? And this Help Town Association in 1847 was an organization that really pushed things forward. And provided pressure groups in various cities of the country that encouraged the creation of parks. And that was necessary because of sort of particularly the bad air that was now prevalent in all major industrial cities as a result of industry and the coming together of large amounts of people in relatively small spaces. We know about Louden's proposals for breathing places of the metropolis and basically providing these rings of parks. That was his proposal, and ways for the air to flow away. Now and that came in the wake of the so-called monster soup, the pollution of the Thames and its environment, and the fact that this was all a pretty unsavory condition for people in cities, and one of the main issues that was raised was so-called miasma. And miasma were these bad airs that arose from cities, and that formed a driving force for landscape design and planning. And I'm just giving you two little examples of that. The thing about miasma was that there was stagnant air which contained all the monster soup. It's completely discounted now, but it drove landscape design. So here an example of the FOLAR monument in Giderio, which was placed at the windiest position in the city, on the edge of the valley, with the views out to it was there because nobody wanted it near. Yeah, because this was the cholera people who were buried here in the outbreak. You didn't want stagnant air in that place. So here, the space taken for it was determined on the fact that the miasma would not occur here. And in that we can also see it at the Sheffield General Cemetery. Yeah, so in Victorian times you didn't really want to see a burial, but why then have these panels? Yeah, so that was there in order to have a through flow of air through the cemetery that lies beyond that, and it was one of the sort of the design features of, and you see this not just here, but you see that in cemeteries around the country, and it was was one of the things that was advised with respect to driving out miasma. Well, some realized that this wasn't just that one issue. The Thames remained polluted, and it was so bad that something needed to be done. And London also foresaw its sewage system in order to improve public health. And Joseph Bazalgette devised the sewage system, but also, of course, underground and more importantly, clean water. That is clear when you look at his monument, which is in the fall of a Roman spring, and served as a model for his statue. So he basically provided the health of the city through introduction of, and that went together with the design of the landscape, which I have addressed in a previous lecture, which was where Robert Marnock got involved and the creation of these parks and thoroughfares of London. So connecting and interconnecting in order to get through flows of air and a healthy environment. But if we just stick with the supply water. Yeah, the water fountains are therefore very much part of any public park. Yeah, it was a sort of health, and yeah, here's that the Thames embankment. For the first time, the plane tree was used as a street tree in this country, and that provided was very much provided in order to provide shade, fresh air, to take up pollutants, and it was all the things that we talk about today. They were all sort of from observation, and which we're proving today, and that is one of the things. You know, a lot of the historic stuff has been discounted over the last 20 years. There's been a lot of research specifically on little details, which actually proves that this was the case. But we've realized this for 2,000 years. That's how a way to spend money. And like Paris, you know, London had the ambience of having a similar structure. Paris also had a similar issue, health, and they needed a sewage system, and that was cut through. That's why you've got these avenues. It's not because of being able to fight all the people. This was a necessary thing in order to have straight sewer systems and straight lines, as well as the woodlands and the parks and the avenues that interconnected these, all for the healthy city. In London also, you know, epic forest and beaching, Burnham beaches are either side. So it was basically it's what the ambience of health provision was at the time, and yeah, in Paris it's beautifully expressed in a great book that became a standard work for all landscape architecture. But that by that stage it was already being applied elsewhere. And the other great example was Vienna. And Vienna had sort of the area of Glacis, which is an area that was reserved to defend the city. By the early 19th century, that became redundant, or late 18th century really, but it took them 50 years to think about what to do with that area. Then, as opposed to building on it in the same dense manner, it was sort of built on. They had a competition in 1857, which came up with over 100 proposals for how to fill in this area. That became the model of modern city planning of the period, with avenues and public buildings that were widely spaced, and where the environment was considered to be health making. Yeah. So here we go back just to say the health making. Here the Royal Parks again. This point from the east side, looking back towards Kensington. Horses were a very important part, and and that formed a very important example of what to achieve. And here, all the early parks, as a result, have got these drives all the way around. Yeah, these carriage drives, as because horses were considered to be part of these early park proposals. One of those is Victoria Park, where this carriageway is found. So here's evidence of design for a particular purpose, and it's not necessary for our current users. And fortunately, we've been able to oust the car. But I remember the fight, yeah, which was still ongoing in the 90s. I worked on Victoria Park then. Another type of garden were these pleasure gardens in Vauxhall, which were a model for, when you read Galen Crance's book on the politics of park design, she recognizes this period of pleasure gardens period these gardens were the model. They were walks and in the open and provision of facilities, music, and other entertainment. So and another entertainment was sort of FOLAR, which on the right hand side, St James's Park. These walks were laid out to be walked along, and this became one of the main walks in London, to be outside in the open air, to take the air, and that was pushed. But in the center here, you see a game, and games were also thought to engage the brain and the body. So those are also contemporary words. And another sort of type of open air entertainment that was considered to be good and health making were the so-called tea gardens, which were everywhere throughout the country. And Britain started with it in the 18th century, but it was something that moved on to the continent and became a very popular feature, with Nigel Temple collecting a fantastic amount of illustrations, and which are just waiting for someone to research. Any young researchers here, do come over to me afterwards. I'll point you in the right way. So, and yeah, the seeing of nature was considered to be good, and that is proven with sort of the buoyancy of botanic gardens at the end of the 18th century. Private botanic gardens. These were nurserymen who collected plants and then opened their gardens, and you were able to take a cup of tea as well there. And these were this is William Curtis's garden, and these were very important, and became the models for the botanic gardens of the 19th century, which were referred to as the public gardens, and which were funded by joint stock ventures. So these were intended to be open to the public, and Sheffield Botanic Garden was one of the first, and Liverpool, of course, was early. Liverpool was ahead of everything, also of London. So, yeah, Sheffield was one of those, and designed by Robert Marlowe. And here you see it was used for entertainment. It was used for exhibitions. These were places, and for walking up and down. They all had a terrace. The promenade was a very important aspect. So another feature is skating. Yeah, and there were lots of cold winters in those days, and that was something that was considered to be good entertainment and health making, until there was in Regent's Park that sort of group of I think 56 people went through the ice and drowned. At that moment they said, hey, this is not the thing to do. So what they did is they raised the bottom of all the lakes in the city, in the parks, so that this wouldn't reoccur. So here we got, yeah. So the evidence of skating is that, you know, when you sort of you go into about this level, so the ground was raised like below them. So yeah, there's actually archaeological evidence of that too. And bathing, yeah, water, health, East End. You know, Saxby's got this fantastic photograph in there of the male pond, and yeah, before what was it, 7 o'clock, 3,000 young men and an old man would go over there and sort of entertain themselves by going in and out and clean themselves, courtesy of what is now Thames Water. This still supplies the drinking water. So nobody knows it. But that wasn't the way Victoria Park had been planned. Victoria Park had been planned for field entertainment, for riding, and for different sports. That was the idea when in James Spanner thought. And that was only a few years, and that was sort of redone by Gibson, who designed in these lakes. These ponds. So there's a pond for swimming, male pond, female pond. There was a lido and a lake for boating. Yeah. So all that was sort of part, and is evidence of sort of the diversity in requirements, and the drinking fountain, of course. So all these water elements came in as with the alterations. So boating was important, and is still a feature. This was taken a couple of weeks back in Miller's Park. So we got the evidence of the boating in various ways. One thing that lays very little sort of archaeological evidence is this kind of entertainment, snow, but and that can also be said about the use of these areas. What is the evidence of that? Well, the evidence is that this is multifunctional use, and oops, yeah, and that's what we still see in parks. Yeah, this leaves very little archaeological evidence, except that people lose the coins out of their pockets, say, since sort of been found in the grass. Yeah. So, but other aspects have got a greater market. There's various sports have all got their specific requirements. And they require certain space. The rules get altered and more space gets taken. These were very much entertainment that was considered to be good for people's health. And the physical evidence of that is considerable when you look at the clutter that they provide and the space they take, which is not being used by other purposes. And that is something that they call appropriation of these various sports. It's good in a way, but it's also bad. Yeah. You don't need green grass. Yeah. And this is the way it was commonly played until it was formalized. And unfortunately, I've taken it was in Sheffield where that happened. But sports and football was something that we all did. We went out for a good sort of, not too careful. Yeah. And also rugby, similar, except that this, of course, was something that was played at particularly boarding schools. And the evidence of that, and we've got 30,000 grass pictures in this country, which is sort of included in open space provision. A lot of it, of course, is not open space. I mean, it's built over. But it's quite interesting. Half of it is in the education sector, and 31% is local authority, and then the rest is next 20% is private. So it's not really public. And I've seen this happen. This is because for sports you can get separate grants. So in Hillsborough Park, the rugby ground, which is alongside it as part of the park, has now grown its hedge and has its separate buildings. So and it's car park, which you see there behind the trees. That's all since I've lived in Sheffield, and that was 1995. So and you see this gradually occurring. So things got improved, and then the club gets a new status. What do? Newcastle, famous example. You build a new facility in a park, and then you give the air facility which you've got, and you turn that back into a park. But it's not ideal. Your historic park goes. It's the same with tennis. It started off quite small. Here's the earliest real or royal tennis court on the right, bottom right here at Falkland Palace. And that then was played outside, greater health, but it then becomes a hard surface. And then the walls go up. And it gets excluded from the general provision, as it has done here in Antwerp Park in Sheffield. These were tennis courts in part of Antwerp Park. Now it's run separately, it's run privately after having been owned by the council. Bowling, bowling wasn't considered to be suitable. Too much gambling going on. So that, some people, started to recognize that it is an unlawful game, but there were also other aspects, it took a long time for it to come into parks, but that was after the rules and regulations were changed, and it's the same with and croquet. On the other hand, was a sort of a more middle class, so that was okay. So and we see the evidence of that, and again you see appropriation. You can't actually walk on that, you've got to have special shoes. So this is no good for other purposes, and but it's only of fairly recent. So because it took a long time to find acceptance for this. In Sheffield it was 1905. Other cities will be sort of similar periods. So, and there are different traditions in different countries. This is with Frouch, and where I did mainly sports for old men, and in a couple of years I shall be entertaining myself again. Then gymnasiums. That was introduced. This is the one of the first which was provided by the government. In Primrose Hill. Victoria Park also had one. 1848, this one. And the health benefits were certainly sort of was the rationale behind all this. But only for boys. Girls didn't have to be healthy. And you see gradual appropriation. This was a bowling green in Kilkenny in the 17th century. It continued for a long time, and then at a certain moment, there's a lack of interest, and then we need space for playground, and then we get a playground, and then it becomes muddy, and then someone says, we can get some tarmac. So here we are. So run-up. You don't want, but it's still there. It's still a health provision. And this is more temporary. In volleyball, you don't see sort of appropriation of that very much. Not in this country. And what goes in goes out. We don't want to do this. We don't want to feed the ducks, but it's still entertaining. And it is a reason why a lot of people go to the park. It's the same with walking dogs. It is it's a plane. Where you take the dog for a walk, and dog walking is one of the main health benefits of And I spoke to someone last week and said the NHS should prescribe dogs. I thought it was a good one. But a lot of people also don't like dogs, so there is an issue, and that's not what I'm going to resolve here. And so we need to create for variety. We need to have different types of provision, and we need it needs to be sort of for different groups of people. And then I think this is an illustration that gives it, handicapped, cycling. It can all be done together. This is a very disciplined country still, in Babelsberg, in Germany, but it is also other places. And cycling is one of these issues that is never resolved, but also was an object of design at certain points. With pistes cyclables still featuring within modern one. Here we do it differently. You throw up some concrete and tarmac over the top, plastified stuff over there, and then we've got entertainment. All we do is slightly rougher. It's all possible, it's all in parks. Not very well designed. So, just sort of rounding up. So we've seen all kinds of physical provision, but the other aspect that was very much realized from the 1840s onwards was the provision of the need to have color and plants, with color particularly. The health benefits were researched in France, and by the end of the 1880s, there were all kinds of advisors who went around, French advisors, who went around Europe and the United States and advised on having provision of color within parks. And I thought that was a good one because that was for your mental health. The New York Park Service was advised by a Frenchman whose report makes entertaining leaps. We still got some of that, but it is on its last legs, very much so. And there is no money left to do this. Few exceptions. This is Regent's Park, where this is still occurring, but it's not the quality of what it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. The inner circle also, it was revised in the 1930s to enable public health. And one of the things was the provision of more color. So here we go. Now, so we can't have this anymore? Perhaps we can. But it's not something that is very much considered within the present sort of cohort of managers. Because it is not liked by some of the public who have got different sort of notions. But we are in a period of change. And 2 weeks ago, this map was published by NASA, which shows you what's going to happen by 2100 with the current rate of climate warming, which basically means that these central bands will be not inhabitable for human beings, and we will all have to move north. We're okay, but it will be a lot hotter. And the mega dense cities will be over there. This will, result in, or this will be as a consequence of a lot of migration and disturbance. The seas will be dead because of algal bloom. And seas are also very important for the provision of oxygen. So it is starting to dawn that we've got to do things differently. Most cities have started to act, and this is a biofilter in a park in Oslo, where grey water comes in and is cleaned up. And here, a bit of experimental planning of what might happen in this country. But it's not enough. We need more. And preferably, we need drastic action and change of attitudes. Even Sheffield's great green scheme that provides color. And this is the color that is being studied at the moment as being sort of beneficial to people's health, not the color in belly. This is something that is, not the future, it's the present. It won't be the future, because even this is going to be wiped out by climate warming. And we need to have completely different cities. So I'll leave you with that. And we don't want it, preferably. And I've seen too much of this. I've been over in China a number of times since, well, of years. And this is the type of building that is inhabited by people, but you can see the atmosphere. This is not a health-making city. And yeah, drastic action required.
Thank you very much.
So yeah.
I failed to introduce you properly, but I think you did a pretty good job of telling us your expertise in that great core of the history of public parks and
You've got a question, sir.
yes. You can't get away yet. It's almost 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Are there any questions of elucidation to Jan, bearing in mind we are going to have a panel session at the end of the day?
I've got one question. You showed a slide of some Hyde Park carriages, and they're all full of men. I wondered if there was another slide where it showed women not pushing prams.
Well, it was also something that women did, but they wouldn't be seen, of course. I mean, you were allowed to sit inside and peek out, but the men were on the top, and yeah. So the women were well taken care of.
Well, thank you. You got away lightly.
Yeah.
You'll be back.
I don't know.